Hello and welcome to Envisioning 2050 on Pakistan Now. I am Osama Zamani. On this show, we're inviting different policymakers, experts, and academics to talk about the future and how it would look like in 2050. And also, as a part of this show, we're trying to create awareness in people so that they are better off in creating better businesses, in solving complex problems, and making the right decisions. To this end, we're discussing two of the most complex issues which will determine the course of our future. On one hand, we are anticipating a rise in population from 221 million people to 440 million people by 2040. This rise in itself is more than 100% in our population. On the other hand, we're among the 10 worst countries that are affected by climate change. Although it is going to affect a wide number of areas, the management of water resources is certainly one of them. That also includes our ability to use water for agriculture, for industrial purposes, and also for sanitation-related purposes. To discuss more on this, I have an expert today who specializes on this very subject. My expert, he happens to have an expertise in urban management and has also served as an economic advisor with the Ministry of Finance. My guest today is Dr. Naveed Iftikhar. Dr. Naveed Iftikhar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I wanted to start off this discussion, but before that, I was really curious as to what really got you interested into urban planning and management. What was that first thought of inspiration that got you started? Like you decided that, this has to be my thing. I have a knack for urban planning and management, and I should, get into this and take it up as a career. So tell us about your journey and a little story that got you started.
Yeah, thank you. So let me just share with you, I was a mainstream economic policy practitioner like any other economist in Pakistan. When I was at Finance Ministry, so Dr. Nadeemul Haq was used to be a Deputy Chairman Planning Commission.
I see.
And he worked on something that's called Framework for Economic Growth. And that was the first time ever in Pakistan's mainstream public policy that someone talked about cities and cities as engines of growth. And for some time, I couldn't understand that concept. But it actually triggered some interest to read more about cities and urban policy. So I would give this lot of credit to that, Dr. Nadeemul Haq's ideas.
I kind of want to take this discussion from there and want to ask you a slightly personal thing. You also happen to have an interest in cycling, so you enjoy pedaling. I wanted to ask you, what really got you interested into cycling, and what kind of relationship does that have with urban management?
So let me share with you. I earlier mentioned to you that when we talk about cities, it's about urban life. It's about quality of life. And so what is important in cities? Cities, one of the very important aspect of our city life is how we move from one place to another place. And unfortunately in Pakistan, in many other cities in the world as well, this is called transportation. So when we talk about transportation, it comes into our mind, it's about our cars, it's about probably, buses, it's about trains and something like that. But, this concept of mobility, that does not come to our mind. So when policymakers make decisions, they always invest in infrastructure for cars. They don't think about all those people who do not have cars. So this is more of an inequality issue in our public investment. So the one was sustainability in terms of environmental effects. The second one is inequality. And the third one is, now what is happening, as I earlier mentioned to you, it's more about quality of life. And when you walk in a city, when you cycle a city, then you experience the city.
That's interesting. Do you plan on having, or say proposing or launching any initiative, with other co-cyclists to promote cycling? And do you have like any tangible number in mind or any tangible initiative in mind to sort of promote cycling?
So we started it in Islamabad, and it has spread to other cities as well. We started with a very small initiative. This is called Cycling Sunday.
Okay.
What we do actually that first Sunday of every month, we organize Cycling Sunday on Jinnah Avenue. We close it for cars. The idea is that, people come together, they cycle, many people come. Cycling is not just a mode of sport actually, it's also a mode of entertainment, recreation and mobility. So we want to give that message.
Right.
We are doing it, for a year now, every month, first Sunday of every month. And in that initiative, we have partners, we have with us from Islamabad administration, some cycling communities, some running communities as well. But more importantly, what we encourage actually families to join us. And there are many families who join us with their kids because they want to have this safe space for cycling. And I'll share with you that many women join that event and they tell us that they have not cycled since their childhood.
My goodness.
So, because in Pakistan, you won't see many women cycling.
True.
And this is a taboo sort of a thing, a woman is cycling. And recently we are seeing that I've seen a few women on motorbikes, but cycling is still a taboo. So women don't get that chance, but many women used to do cycling in their childhood. So they have those memories, they have those enjoyment, they have those association with cycling, but they never got a chance. So we start the Cycling Sunday, and from that we have also developed, from my organization Urban Innovation, we have developed a cycling strategy for Islamabad.
Interesting.
So we've submitted it to the government, so they've not implemented it yet, but we are pushing for it, that how can you make your city cycle friendly?
I see.
And so I also organized an event in Rawalpindi, but organization of event is just a beginning actually. We need more, equitable investment in infrastructure. That when we invest, we need to hold our city governments accountable that how much money you are investing for cars, how much money you are investing for buses, how much money you are investing for pedestrians, for cyclists. So these are different modes of mobility.
So how could cyclists claim more space? What would you propose, like in, say, 2 or 3 ways through which the government could enable cyclists to, reclaim spaces on roads and
So
public
3-4
places?
things that we've suggested. Number one, we need dedicated cycling lanes. We need to reduce speed of cars actually on our roads. Like in Islamabad, the speed limit is 70 kilometer, 80 kilometer. In residential areas where people have to cross roads, the speed shouldn't be more than 40 kilometer. The most important thing that we need to do in our cities is reduce the car speed. And we don't need to go for signal-free roads or motorway sort of roads within the city limits, like Jinnah Avenue. Jinnah Avenue is a classic example. If you go in anywhere in the downtown of the world, you won't see that two sides of downtown cannot meet each other.
Okay.
So right now, we've disconnected them actually, and only for cars. So we need to have these pedestrian signals. We need to have cyclist signals on these, wherever these intersections are. So we propose these changes. But the first thing is to have dedicated cycling lanes. The second thing is what we need to do is to, just reduce the car speed. And we need to disband this practice of signal-free roads in our cities. So reducing car speed and having dedicated cycling lanes will initiate this, more cycling and awareness, and where we can, then go to cycle to school, cycle to office. Some of these things can be incentivized. And the third thing and the last thing is, how do you discourage car usage?
I see.
So there are different ways. Like the very important way is congestion tax. Congestion tax comes in a different way. People travel on these congested roads, they need to pay toll. You see this expressway, people come from DHAs or barriers, PWD, they need to pay toll actually. It should be made expensive for them to travel in individual car. So there is this concept of, where the carpooling thing, that if you have in your car 3 to 4 people, then you don't need to pay any tax, toll tax.
Okay.
But if you are alone and riding a car, then you need to pay a tax.
Okay.
And similarly, there is this, what we need in Islamabad is heavy charges for car parking. So, this space that we are sitting right now in this restaurant, that will only occupy car parking of 3 to 4 cars, and they'll be free. They can use it from morning till the evening without paying anything.
Okay.
But just ask this cafe that how much they are paying rent.
Okay.
Just compare it.
Right.
So for cars, it's free. But to do business, you have to pay a heavy rent.
I see.
So we need to, just manage that aspect of land use where they need to pay, car parking. So that's where you discourage cars and you encourage more sustainable modes of mobility. And cars are also using this imported fuel, doing emissions, and cycling is a more sustainable, healthy entertainment, recreation sort of mode of mobility.
Interesting. So, Dr. Naveed Iftikhar, I would want to sort of now take the discussion a little further and want to kind of ask you to please expand for our audience and kind of like simplify the science and the elements behind urban management, and also the other issue that we're going to discuss in this podcast, and that is water management. I would like you to unpack and deconstruct it so that people understand what do we mean by these two things.
Okay. So let me start with the urban management. And before unpacking urban management, what we need to understand, unpack the concept of the city itself. So what is a city? City is actually so many people, firms living together. If you go in a rural area, you'll find 200 households living together, 300, 500. And even in abroad somewhere in other countries, even those 300 households will be considered a city actually. But here in Pakistan, we'll consider that a rural area. That's a separate debate. Okay. So when we talk about city, it's actually concentration of human settlement. Many human beings living together. And living together, what should be that number? In different countries, it's a different number. So now what is urban management? So unpack it. Urban management means to maximize the advantages of city life and to minimize the disadvantages of city life. But we need to understand that how to maximize benefits of concentration, density, and agglomeration, how to minimize disadvantages of concentration, this density and agglomeration. That's urban management.
Right. So it's basically about the density of population that you get in the cities, and how do we make them more productive or add value to this density, the mass of people that we have, the mass of infrastructure that we have, and the contest for resources. You spoke about contest. And the other bit that I wanted to sort of want you to really expand on is the construct of, or the practice of water management itself. So I want you to go ahead and kindly expand on it. What is water management in different settings? I'm sure the way you would want to manage water in cities may be different when you're saying that, or when you're considering management of water for agriculture or for industrial purposes. So could you just slightly unpack this also for us?
So when we talk about water management, then it's not just about just providing water. It's much more than that actually. So it's about the quality of water. It's about the frequency of water supply. So what happened that over the time, this water management crisis has been increasing in a way that what we thought that water management is, again, it's all about infrastructure. So we didn't focus much on the water management aspect. What is water management? There are different aspects, like who will pay for water management and who will pay for the infrastructure. Right. So there are different models in the world. And like, somewhere the governments are leading that, somewhere the private provision is also there. But generally in the world, there is this concept that water is a common resource pool. And there needs to be public investment in the water sector. And there are many benefits of water. So infrastructure development has to be done by the public sector. And then there is this management aspect where you can include private players, you can include them for water recovery, you can include them for water cleanliness, public-private partnerships. So if we go further, I will tell you that water management in Pakistan particularly is a huge issue. Okay. And the reason is our cities are expanding and their size is enlarging. We have more rural-urban migration and then natural rate of growth of cities. But our water infrastructure as well as water management is not keeping pace with that increase in population.
Okay.
So what is water management in Islamabad will be different than what is water management in Karachi.
Right.
So there is different of this context as well. But this is a very important service, and it has not only benefit for just quality of life. It has amazing benefit for productivity of human beings as well. Starting from demand management, how do you use water? How do you waste water? And how much are you paying for water? And then there are equity issues as well. You are providing water like Islamabad CDA is providing to the main sectors, but what about these suburban settlements? CDAs, then there are issues of social justice. CDA is bringing water from Simli Dam. Those pipes pass through Barako, but people of Barako cannot access that water, and that comes right to the E7 or F7 or F6 area. So there is this issue of environmental justice involved in water. So Islamabad, if we talk about Islamabad, so the groundwater is not sufficient. So what Islamabad is doing? Islamabad is bringing water from all across its, those geographies and then wasting it here. So if this city has shortage of water, then we need to be more prudent about water. So it's not environmental justice that you are fetching water from everywhere to bring it here and waste it here. So what do we mean by water management here is different. And similar inequality issues in Karachi, where KWSB is managing water. You may have heard about all that tanker issues. Then you go into the rural settings. What we find actually, planning and development departments, public health engineering departments, they do these water schemes. And many of these water schemes become, redundant after 2 to 3 years because there is no operation and maintenance of these schemes. So that's also a big issue. So there are different issues in water management.
Right. Now I want to kind of bring the discussion to cities like Karachi. Like, for example, we're once again in the monsoon season. And last year when we had the monsoon spell over there in Karachi, we saw that, the city actually got inundated because it experienced rain showers much beyond its capacity to actually, handle the kind of monsoon rain that it usually experiences. So Karachi, for example, has the capacity to cater to about 68 millimeter worth of rainwater. But last year, the downpour was over 587 millimeters. So what is the primary reason, or I'm not saying there must be just sole one reason, which is which is kind of contributing to this problem. What, in your opinion, are few major reasons that are actually resulting in the recurrence of these incessant rain spells and, flooding episodes in the city?
So natural calamities occur everywhere in the world. We are seeing right now in Germany, some of their cities are inundated and, they have this catastrophic, floods, and the flash floods in different cities. So what is important actually, what we need to understand, there are 2-3 things that I'll share with you. One thing that we need to understand or analyze, what are those man-made actions and decisions which have actually, exacerbated the aftermaths of this calamity. So what are those, man-made actions or man-driven actions or governmental policies or private interest which have led to, more devastating effects of this calamity? The second thing that we need to understand, what we have learned from that for the future. And the third one is actually our public policy response to these things. So I'll start with the first one, and it also links to other ones, is over the time what we are seeing in our cities, as I mentioned to you, that there has been a focus on infrastructure development. There has not been a focus on sustainability of our cities, that we have not focused much. This is about resilience, this is about sustainability of cities. We didn't think much about all these aspects of city life. We thought about roads, we thought about buildings only. But we didn't think that what is going to happen. And the biggest, that disaster that we've done over the time is not respecting water bodies in the country, in our cities. Water bodies, water channels. And some of those water channels were blocked actually by housing settlements. And then when the floods came, this water channel that used to pass through those channels and it will go to the sea, that couldn't go through. And resulted into that devastation. So I often say that if you do not respect nature, then nature will not respect you. So if you see any water body in any city that is passing through any city of Pakistan, this is polluted.
Okay.
This is, we throw garbage, we throw sewage out of it, and it gets blocked like Nala Lai. If you see all of this wastage or sewer untreated that goes to Nala Lai, and if they don't do proper dredging, then in the monsoon season it will just result into flash flood. So we do not respect these water bodies. So this is what important thing. Over the time we have reduced trees, thanks to Prime Minister. He's emphasizing at least on tree plantation in cities as well. So this we've not actually respected nature. And the last thing that we need to understand is that what is the public policy response? So public policy response is to understanding more about these urban disasters. How many researchers have done any research on these Karachi's flash floods? What are the lessons out of it? How many universities went there? They analyzed it. So that didn't happen much actually. Only there were few civil society organizations based out of Karachi who voiced against all these issues, but there was not any concrete public policy response. There were evacuations, they removed some people out of those informal settlements, but that was not the way actually. So many of these nalas were blocked by DHA, but no one went there and asked them anything, and they went to those informal settlements. So for flash floods, the key message is respect the water bodies. And even Indus River, if you see that when it starts from northern areas till when we take it to the sea, so every city drops its untreated sewer in this Indus River. So this is where we need to come up with, we need to respect nature.
True. And as part of a personal observation, whenever I've visited Karachi in the last 10 years, I've probably seen the mushrooming of these multi-story buildings. And whenever I see these scenes of floods on the TV, especially last year, I just kept thinking to myself, probably, something has went wrong. Maybe it's been the bureaucracy that hasn't built the supporting infrastructure to cater for these, multi-story buildings, as, the current government also keeps stressing that, we should have, more vertical spaces than horizontal spaces. But then at the same time, are we building the right kind of infrastructure to support that kind of construction?
So I have a different viewpoint. I think these vertical buildings are good for the cities. They are good for these issues as compared to sprawl. So what we are doing wrong actually, you gave example of Karachi. So Karachi, the old Karachi was a compact city. So all these housing settlements that we are constructing, they are dangerous for these environment actually. So if we go vertical, we'll having a compact space, will be more responsible to environment as compared to we are doing sprawl, encroaching agricultural lands, encroaching private property of those villagers, disturbing their life and ecosystem. So I personally think that vertical buildings are better. But having said that, then for those vertical buildings, you need proper management, you need proper guidelines, you need proper surveillance, you need proper insurance system for those vertical buildings, their design, their aspects. And those regulations comes in where the government had to ensure the quality of those buildings. They are resilient to such disasters, catastrophes, and these are aspects where we have to consider these aspects. But as a concept, if we are living together, we are living in a dense settlement, it's better than sprawl. So that's my viewpoint.
Right. And I kind of want to take you from Karachi now to Lahore, because I would be doing a lot of, I must say, injustice if I do not speak of Lahore, if I speak of Karachi. So the government recently announced a decision to undertake the development of Ravi City Project. What do you think that in order to revive the river itself and to have this city by the river and to make this project more sustainable, what would the government need to do?
So I'm personally against that project.
Okay.
And the reason is that this is rooted in our ignorance about our cities, that we have this idea of very planned, regimented cities. cities have to evolve organically. And Pakistan have highest urbanization rate in the world. And there are already our smaller villages are converting into towns. Our towns are, we are not lacking any city. We are blessed with so many cities. We do not need these cities where we develop these master planned cities and rigid structures, and those are not according to the human life patterns. Because when these cities are developed, these are developed on drawing boards. So the human life is much more complex than a drawing board. And what we've seen in Islamabad, that this was a master planned city. It was built in 1960s, and whatever Doxiadis and this Ayub administration thought at that time, things have not resulted in the same way, because it's very difficult to predict human behavior. And cities are all about human behavior. And when they think about these new cities, they think cities in infrastructure only.
Okay.
They think cities are engineering structures. So I tell people that cities are actually concentration of people and ideas. Cities are not concentration of buildings. So this project, they wanted to improve the environment, sprawl of cities, but they led to another sprawl actually. Now what will happen in the future? In the future, this Ravi city and Lahore, they will join together. And you'll have Lahore already expanding to Muridke, it has joined Muridke, it has joined Kasur, it has joined, almost Okada. And Lahore is expanding, and this suburban planning that we did, instead of vertical growth, this is actually destroying the city. So this urban city project is another sprawl. I won't call it a new city.
Okay.
And
so what do you say, despite the fact that they're stressing construction of vertical infrastructure like multi-story buildings over there, would that in a way be able to cater to this sprawl that you just pointed out?
No, it will not. It will not. Where will people come into that living in? Just think for a while, because when we do this planning, we don't think about, who is going to live there. That's the question.
Right.
Do you think people who are living in DHA, they will shift to that Ravi city? Do you think people living in Gulshan will go there? No, probably not. So what is going to happen? This is going to happen just, people coming from other areas to this place. But your original motive was to reduce sprawl of Lahore.
Okay.
And if you wanted to do it, you needed to improve management and quality of life of smaller cities.
Okay.
Instead of bringing another city near Lahore. It's not near Lahore actually, it is Lahore. So you are sprawling Lahore. And if you wanted to stop people to come to Lahore, you should have improved Multan, you should have improved Jhelum, you should have improved Taxla, and all these cities are Attak. And this thing is actually wrongly rooted in this phenomenon of new cities. And we do not need new cities. All we need is better management of our existing cities.
I see.
And every town is organically converting into a city. Let it happen organically. The government's job is to manage cities properly. Instead of doing these, this will be a real estate sort of speculation scam at the end of the day, where we are encroaching farming land. At the one hand, the government is serious about plantation and forestation, and then they are building a city that is already a forestation or agricultural land.
Right.
So this is something that conceptually it's a wrong move.
Right. And I wanted to take the discussion slightly a little further from here, but I could at least get the sense that it would still be a difficult challenge for the government to make this entire project more sustainable, and by making sure that it remains on that very same tangent that the government wants to take it on. Moving from here, I slightly wanted to ask you about these two myths that you kind of mentioned at one place. If you could just kind of expand on it in your own words, these two myths about managing cities and about the master plans. Could you just go ahead and...
So there are two things actually. When we talk about cities, then everyone in Pakistan is crying that our cities are increasing. They are enlarging. So it's a good thing, that if Pakistan wants to grow, then we have to urbanize. There is no other chance.
Right.
So what happened? I grew up in a village. At some point of time, I studied at a university and decided to live in a city.
Okay.
So if I compare my life in this urban center versus my farming life earlier, this is much better than that. That's why I decided to live here. Now I have decided, I have moved to Islamabad, and now I say that other people should not move to Islamabad. You know,
Right.
this is rooted in that,
That would be quite
discrimination.
selfish.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not saying pull everyone to cities, but I'm saying that don't discourage people to move.
Right.
Or don't do it, let people decide where they want to live. If people are preferring Lahore over Islamabad, it's okay. You know, what you need to do, you do not need to worry the increase in the population. You need to worry about the management of the city.
Right.
So your city management should respond accordingly.
Right.
If people are choosing to live in Lahore, then Lahore's management should be providing them services and thinking to improve their management according to enlarged population.
Right. So if I were to ask you, what would be the ideal measure to replan these cities like Rawalpindi, Karachi, and Lahore, which are actually based on, the idea of an old model city?
So I think this is important in a way that every city has its own context. There are a few things which are cross-cutting, and if you have to improve any city in the world, the starting point should be improving mobility. That if you improve mobility of people, they can move from one place to another place sustainably, easily. It brings lot of benefits.
Right.
Because you don't need to think many other things. One is mobility. The second thing is the land use planning.
Right.
Because in Pakistani context, where our population, our median age is 22 point something, and we need more jobs. So what cities need to do, and agriculture mechanization, more people will move to cities. So cities need to think that how do we provide jobs and opportunities for youth. So they need to act from land use planning side, because in our cities right now, residential sprawl is increasing, commercial spaces are squeezing, commercial rents are very high in our cities. We'll have to bring them down if we need to create more jobs. So this is the target for our cities moving forward. They need to bring commercial rents down, and they need to discourage sprawl. They need to go high rises, because for youth they need jobs, they need housing, they need mobility. So if I have to do something, I will say that reorient not replan cities, I would say reorient city management with the focus on youth. When you'll focus on youth, think about those young women. If she grew up in Lahore and she has got a job in Islamabad, now where will she live? How will she move? And so these are the questions that city management asks to themselves, and they should plan accordingly.
Right. So, Dr. Naveed, you've also served as a governance specialist with the government also, I think in the past with the Ministry of Finance. Could you tell us, is there any specific policy document, like an urban policy that the government has come out with and it is sticking to its policy? Could you just tell us a little bit about it, if there is any such policy?
So there has never been any seriousness in the government towards urban policies. And I told you earlier that Nadeemul Haq worked on Framework for Economic Growth. That was the first such document. Then there were some other, urban policy units that provincial governments have established, like Punjab has developed Punjab Spatial Strategy. Sometimes they develop these documents at a provincial level, at an urban level, at a federal level. So I always emphasize we need city management policies at a city level. Like if you go on CDA website, if you go on ICT administration, if you go on Lahore government or LDA website, will you find any policy document? No. So our policy making at the city level, urban policy, is totally missing. So as a governance level, we need to focus on city management and city level policies actually. So the broad framework is okay that federal government or provincial government gives, but these policies should emanate from the local consultation and according to the context of a city.
So looking towards the future, say, as we're saying, envisioning 2050, what would be the key areas that you would kind of stress on the urban policy to have in the future, and for our urban management planners to go ahead and, sort of focus on these very key themes in order to ensure that we have more smarter urban spaces, we have infrastructure that is supportive of both new residential spaces, but also is able to accommodate new commercial spaces in the cities and smaller towns also.
So let me share with you. Right now, the official statistics say that we are around 39% urbanized, but I personally think we are somewhere between 50 to 60% urbanized right now.
Okay.
And in the future, what you are mentioning, 30 years from now, our Pakistan will be about somewhere around 70 to 80% urbanized. So that's a huge challenge. Challenge not in terms of cities are enlarging, and challenge doesn't mean that we should not do it. It's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. The challenge is our urban management. So for the next 30 to 50 years, what I say that Pakistan will be fully urbanized. So now we need to learn the art of city management.
Right.
One. The second thing, we need to shift focus from what our UETs have been focusing on, town planning discipline. So this is no more a town planning. It's a city management field. And we need to evolve towards city management. We need to learn it. Our administration, our political leadership, they need to learn city management. We need to devolve local governments. We need to have empowered city governments. The third and very important thing that I want to mention is the sustainability of our cities. That over the time there will be more climate change challenges in our cities that we need to address. And the last thing that I would emphasize for the future, I earlier also mentioned it, that we need to reorient our urban management. Mm-hmm. And when I say reorient our urban management, we need to focus on youth and women. Make your cities conducive for youth and women, for their mobility, for their jobs, for their housing, for their social life. All these aspects we need to cover, because our youth is entering into our cities from rural areas, and also youth that is emerging from our cities. They don't find social spaces. They don't find vibrant public spaces. Many of them want to leave Pakistan. Many say they go for economic opportunities. I say no, they do not go for opportunities. They do because of this suffocated environment of our cities. They don't have quality life here. So if we want to improve our cities, we need to focus on youth and women. We need to be more inclusive for youth and women. And then we need to improve this mobility aspect, that if we have to move people and goods from one place to another place, then our city's population will be increasing. And then we need to focus more on sustainable modes of mobilities, because this car-centric infrastructure is going to aggravate our problems. It's not going to solve our problems. So we need to go for public transportation. We need to go for pedestrianization. We need to go for more cycling in our cities. And with all that, we need to improve this practice of city management, where we can learn these, but there is this common theme that's called cities for people. So we need to think about people, their lives, not just buildings and infrastructure.
So as a last question, I would like to ask you if you could just suggest 3 things or 3 little acts that people can do. And I want you to think as an optimist and suggest to the community that they can do to become good urban managers.
Okay. So one thing that I want to emphasize, for a long time we thought that urban and city planning, it's all something that engineers need to think about. And common people thought that this is probably something that I don't have any knowledge. If you are living in a city, you need to think about that cities. The very first thing is don't trust or don't let just governments and engineers plan your cities. Be an active participant in your city management. Think what's happening in your neighborhood, think what's happening in your streets, and try to collaborate with other people. And if you can do it, do it. And if you think that you are not that sort of a person who can do all that social thing and bringing people together, at least you can raise awareness on social media. You can write about it, what's happening in your cities. You can raise your voice. And where this is the second thing. The third thing is actually for more organized civil society organization. Those are business chambers, those are NGOs, and those are universities, or academic institutions, or think tanks. Over the time, many of these people were also focusing on social development, many other aspects, but urban was not a theme in their thinking process. Urban governance, urban management, urban sociology. So where this intellectual community comes in, journalists, all these people, they need to think that organize people towards this urban management issues, and they need to do more research on these aspects, because right now we do not have much research on these aspects in our cities. So you need to, common person, you don't need to think that you need a town planning degree. If you are living in a street, you need to think about your street. You are more expert than any urban planner or any city manager sitting in CDA or LDA, because you know your street better. So how should your street be redesigned? How should your neighborhood be redesigned? And how do you want to move? Mobility options that you need to consider yourself, and you need to organize it with other people around yourself.
Dr. Naveed Iftikhar, I would like to thank you, and thank you so much once again for coming over and being part of the show. We look forward to having you once again, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.